In 1843, 17 orphan girls vanished, one by one, from a remote religious boarding school in the woods of Massachusetts. No screams, no bodies, no answers. For nearly 2 centuries, the truth was buried, until now, a forgotten letter has resurfaced, and what it reveals was never meant to be read. Are you ready to hear what really happened behind those chapel doors? Before we continue with the story of Whitmore Seminary and uncover what really killed those 17 girls, I need to tell you something important. This channel isn't for everyone, only for the bravest souls who dare to seek the truth behind America's darkest mysteries. Few channels dare to tell the stories we tell here, stories that have been buried by institutions and forgotten by time. If you've made it this far, you're not like most people. You're someone who needs to know what others are afraid to discover. So, hit that subscribe button and join the select few who know these secrets. And tell me in the comments, what state are you listening from? Are you brave enough to hear mysteries from your own backyard? Now, let's return to story. They found her hair braided into the roots beneath the chapel floorboards. That was the first line of the letter, hidden inside a rusted oil lantern discovered during renovations of the abandoned Willowbrook School for Girls, deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, a place the state once tried to erase from its own maps. The letter was dated July 4, 1831, and signed only with the initials SC. Inside the envelope were 17 names. Each one belonged to a girl reported missing between May and August of that same year. All of them were students. None of them were ever seen again. And the most disturbing detail, every single name was crossed out in red ink, except for one. Her name was Eliza Caro, 17 years old, the headmaster's daughter. And according to police records never released to the public, she was last seen in the chapel at midnight, barefoot, wearing a white nightgown, staring into the rafters and whispering in a language no one could identify. This story isn't about ghosts. It's about something much older, something engineered, hidden under the veil of religion, morality, and silence. It's about the machinery of obedience disguised as education, about how institutions built for girls were often never designed to empower them, but to erase them, to reformat them, to use them. And when one girl remembered what they did, when she began writing it all down, they buried the school. Not metaphorically, literally. In 1842, state workers were ordered to fill in the valley. Every building destroyed, the chapel burned. No official explanation was ever given, but the graveyard remained. And now, 193 years later, the earth has started giving back what it was forced to forget. You were never meant to hear this story. The history books won't mention it, and the church doesn't want you to remember. But once you hear what really happened in Willowbrook, you'll understand why some institutions are never meant to be reopened, and why some girls were never meant to be saved. Because the truth doesn't just change what you believe about the past, it changes what you believe about yourself. Welcome to the descent. The Willowbrook School for Girls was established in 1826 under the authority of the Virginia Board of Christian Instruction. Officially, it was founded to refine the minds and manners of young ladies from God-fearing families. Unofficially, it functioned as an experimental enclosure, isolated, fortified, and monitored. Built at the edge of a hollow 30 miles from the nearest settlement, the school's location was intentional, hidden from the public eye, accessible only by a narrow switchback road that was often impassable in winter. The school housed no more than 30 students at a time, most between the ages of 11 and 17. They came from respectable families, many of them prominent plantation owners, clergy, or military men. But the girls who were sent here weren't prodigies. They were problems, too curious, too outspoken, too unwilling to fit inside the prescribed mold of a proper Christian woman. And so they were brought here, under the guise of reform and discipline, to be reshaped. The curriculum included arithmetic, penmanship, needlework, and the reading of scripture, but the real instruction took place in silence. Silence was the first rule at Willowbrook. For the first 30 days, New students were forbidden from speaking at all, not to staff, not to each other, not even in prayer. They communicated only through gestures, nods, and the reading of passages chosen for them by the school's headmistress, Sister Clarissa. Sister Clarissa was not a nun. She was a psychologist before there was even a word for it, educated in Geneva, fluent in Greek and Aramaic, and obsessed with behavioral repetition. According to a rare surviving faculty ledger found in an auctioned estate box, she believed that the soul of a child could be reset by severing her attachment to language, family, and personal memory. The dormitories were stripped of mirrors. Letters from home were intercepted, copied by hand, and censored before delivery. Girls who resisted the silence were sent to the reflection room, a windowless chamber in the basement of the chapel. No record exists of what occurred inside, but one girl managed to scratch 5 words into the wall with her fingernail before vanishing. "We are the 13th prayer." To this day, no one knows what that means, but the next student who disappeared 12 days later was Eliza Caro's roommate. And Eliza, it turns out, had begun keeping a journal. Eliza Caro's journal was never meant to be found. Bound in calfskin and stitched shut with coarse twine, it was discovered in 1974 during a private excavation of the Willowbrook ruins by a group of amateur historians. It was hidden inside a hollowed-out beam beneath the chapel pulpit. The beam had been carefully pried open and resealed with wax, a silent act of rebellion carried out by hands no older than 17. Most of the ink had faded, but under UV light the entries became legible again. What they revealed was not a diary in the traditional sense. Eliza didn't write about her daily life, her favorite meals, or adolescent crushes. Her entries read more like testimonies, like warnings. On page 1, scrawled in a trembling hand, were her first recorded words. "Memory is stolen here, but mine bleeds through when I dream." The next entry came 3 days later. "Anne is gone. No one says her name, not even the staff. Her bed is made each morning as if she still sleeps in it. But I remember her. I remember how she used to hum when she brushed her hair. That hum is gone now. The air is silent, and it listens." As the pages unfold, a terrifying pattern emerges. Eliza begins documenting what she calls the repeating, a series of events that seem to happen in cycles, every 12 nights, always in silence, always beginning at 3 a.m. She describes waking to the sound of footsteps on the upper chapel floor, though no one is allowed up there after dark. The footsteps are followed by chanting, low, rhythmic, and in a language that isn't Latin, Greek, or Hebrew. One night, she follows the sound. The upper level of the chapel is empty, except for 13 candles arranged in a perfect circle. At the center, carved into the floor, is a symbol that does not appear in any known Christian tradition. It resembles a tree with roots stretching downward into a ring of mouth. That same night, Eliza has her first seizure. She writes, "My hands would not open. My mouth moved without me. I said things I didn't understand, but my throat burned as if I had spoken them many times before. I heard my own voice whisper, 'The 13th will remember.' And then, silence. The next morning another girl was gone, and Eliza began hearing her name spoken in the silence. The girl who vanished that night was named Lily Whitaker, 16, from Richmond. Her parents were devout Episcopalians who sent her to Willowbrook after she confessed to visions during Sunday service. Visions of women in veils, weeping blood, standing behind the altar as the priest spoke. Lily had been a quiet girl, deeply religious, known for quoting scripture to herself when anxious. She was also the only student Eliza trusted. After her disappearance, Eliza's entries became frantic, shorter, jagged, filled with scratched-out lines and erratic punctuation, as though she feared someone was watching the pages as she wrote them. One entry simply reads, "She's not missing, she's below." What did that mean? According to old blueprints recovered from a historical preservation office in Roanoke, the chapel at Willowbrook was built over a disused mine shaft, one that had been sealed shut decades before the school's construction. But in Eliza's journal, she claims the chapel's floorboards creaked in ways that suggested hollow space underneath, space the staff forbade them to explore. She writes, "We asked Sister Clarissa what lay beneath the pulpit. She smiled without her eyes and said, That's where the weight of your sins goes, child. It's best they stay buried." But Eliza didn't obey. She waited until the 3:00 a.m., repeating resumed, until the footsteps creaked again, until the chapel candlelight flickered through the floorboards, and then she followed. The journal describes a hidden latch beneath the altar rug, one that opened a trapdoor sealed with iron nails. The hinges groaned when she pulled it, and the air that rose from below was not musty, it was sweet, unnaturally sweet, like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. She descended alone. She says the stairwell beneath the chapel did not lead to a crypt or storage room. It led to a circle, a chamber of saying, one older than the foundation, older than the mine shaft, older perhaps than the school itself, and at the center of the circle was a mirror. But it didn't reflect her. I looked in, and the girl inside wasn't me. She wore my nightgown, but her face was wrong. Her eyes were black, her mouth stitched shut with hair, and yet she mouthed my name. Not Eliza, the old one, the name I never told anyone, and scrawled in the margin, nearly illegible, "The 13th isn't a number, it's a roll." After Eliza's encounter beneath the chapel, something inside her changed. Her journal entries became cold, clinical, less like the frightened musings of a teenage girl, more like the notes of an observer documenting a ritual. She stopped referring to herself in the first person. Instead, she began calling herself the vessel. The vessel watched today. The vessel obeyed. The vessel remembered the chant. There is no explanation for this shift, no declaration of transformation, just a break, and then submission. It's as if her identity had been overwritten. By this point in the journal, only 20 students remained. 17 had arrived at the start of term. 5 were added weeks later without explanation. Those 5 never spoke, not even when spoken to. Eliza names them the quiet ones. She claims they were not permitted to eat with the others, sleep in the dormitories, or attend classes. But each night she saw them, moving silently through the halls in perfect synchronization, each girl holding a small object, a feather, a vial, a stone, a lock of hair, a coin. In one chilling entry, Eliza writes, "One of the quiet ones stopped at my door tonight. She didn't knock. She didn't enter. She stood there for exactly 13 minutes, her hand pressed flat against the wood. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And when she left, the candle in my room had turned black." A week later, 3 more girls vanished. This time, no one acknowledged it, not even Sister Clarissa. Beds were removed, names were scrubbed from the prayer rosters, the missing girls' belongings were burned in the chapel furnace without ceremony. It was as if they had never existed. And yet, Eliza remembered everyone. She wrote their names down in the back of the journal in a page titled "The Forgotten Psalm." 17 names, 17 vanished girls. But what disturbed researchers most was, and the accuracy of the list, it was what Eliza had written beneath it, in ink so dark it bled through the pages. Not all of them died. Some were taken. Some became the quiet. Then came the final warning. When the 13th speaks, the mirror will crack, and the old voices will return. That is when you must run. Eliza's journal ends abruptly after that. But days later, Sister Clarissa's own logbook recorded a haunting line. The vessel has vanished, but the mirror has awakened. 3 months after Eliza's disappearance, the state of Virginia sent an inspection team to Willowbrook under pressure from a grieving father who refused to accept the explanation that his daughter had simply run away. The team consisted of 2 education board officials and a physician. Their report, filed quietly and classified until 1987, was never meant to reach the public. But it did. A single surviving copy, misfiled in a university archive, was discovered by accident during a graduate student's research on closed religious institutions. What it describes is not just negligence, it is ritual. The inspectors arrived on the morning of April 3, 1832. They were greeted by silence. No birdsong, no children's laughter. Just the heavy, humid stillness of a place that had not been truly awake in some time. Sister Clarissa met them at the gate. According to the report, she was polite, but her pupils were fully dilated despite the morning light, and she answered every question with a smile that never moved her eyes. Inside, they found the school empty of sound. No students in class, no teachers, no staff apart from Clarissa and two other women in gray habits who refused to speak. All 27 dormitory beds were made with military precision. All trunks were empty. No books on shelves, no clothing, no signs of habitation. And yet, the dining table was set for 13. 13 bowls, 13 spoons, 13 glasses filled with what the report calls a dark liquid, thicker than wine, with a sharp metallic scent. The tablecloth was stained, and carved into the surface beneath each bowl was a name. None of them matched the school's enrollment records. The team proceeded to the chapel. Clarissa refused to unlock the door. That's when the physician, a man named Dr. Wallace, took matters into his own hands. He forced the lock. What he found inside triggered a seizure that hospitalized him for weeks. The official report describes only this: a circle of stone, a mirror suspended over an altar hanging from chains, a smell of iron and violets, symbols we cannot identify, though they resemble pre-Christian sigils of Mesopotamian origin, and beneath the floor, a shaft, breathing. Dr. Wallace never returned to his practice. He refused to speak of what he saw. His final written words, found in his notebook days before he was committed, were chilling. The mirror doesn't reflect light, it reflects memory, and now it has mine. After the inspection team fled Willowbrook, the state ordered the school permanently closed. But instead of demolishing the building, as was customary for abandoned religious institutions, the property was sold quietly to a private trust with no listed board members and an address that traced back to a vacant lot in Boston. The sale went through in under 48 hours. The deed was transferred to an entity calling itself the Ordo Lapidis, Latin for Order of the Stone. No further renovations were recorded, no construction permits filed, no one moved in. The building simply remained. Locals began referring to it as the Hollow House. Children were warned not to go near it. Hunters reported losing dogs near the southern edge of the property, where the trees grew too tightly together and the air felt strange, like it had weight. A postal worker claimed he saw candlelight in the upper windows one night in October 1843. But when authorities searched the building, they found no signs of entry, just dust, just silence. And in the center of the chapel, 13 unlit candles, each with a blackened wick. Then came the disappearances. Between 1845 and 1851, 7 girls from surrounding counties vanished under unexplained circumstances. All were between the ages of 13 and 17. All had recently joined small Episcopal youth groups affiliated with St. Ignatius Parish in Richmond, the same parish that had helped fund Willowbrook's founding. Each girl's bedroom was found meticulously clean, beds made, journals missing, and in every case a single black feather left behind on the pillow. The sheriff of Appomattox County began investigating the connection between the vanished girls and the long-defunct seminary, but before his report could be submitted, he died, his body found in a dried creek bed 5 miles outside of Willowbrook. There were no wounds, no trauma, just a strange gray, eye pallor across his skin, and black beneath his fingernails. Sound familiar? The sheriff's deputy sealed the case, burned the report, and quit the force that same week. But the townspeople knew. They began saying the chapel whispers, that it doesn't echo when you step inside, it listens. One boy, just 10 years old, claimed that if you pressed your ear against the altar floor, you'd hear girls singing, always the same melody, always in Latin. Lauda tenebrae, suscipi vocem, praise the darkness, receive the voice. And then the boy vanished too. By 1853, the name Willowbrook had vanished from state records. Official maps erased the property boundaries, mail routes were redirected, and in one curious move, the seminary's foundation was retroactively classified as unstable ground, despite geological surveys proving otherwise just a year before. But erasure is never perfect. In 1871, a Civil War veteran named Elias Varnum returned to the region, seeking quiet land where he could live out his days in peace. He'd served in the 8th Virginia Infantry, survived Antietam, and walked with a cane after being shot through the thigh. He wasn't afraid of ghosts, until he found the Hollow House. Elias purchased land adjacent to the old seminary at a steep discount. Locals wouldn't go near it. They warned him. He didn't listen. In letters to his sister, now preserved in the Virginia State Archives, he describes his first night on the property. There's a smell in the air like old blood, not rot, not death, older, like something buried in the veins of the earth. And I swear, Hester, I saw a girl in the window, pale, hair like ink. She didn't blink. He boarded up his own windows after that. But every night he heard it. A soft knocking on the wall behind his bed. Always at 3 o'clock a.m., always 13 knocks. He counted. After 13 nights, he finally investigated. He followed the sound out into the field, up the slope toward the chapel. The grass was dead there, though no fire had ever touched it. He described the soil as black like ash but cold like stone. At the chapel's threshold he stopped. He couldn't step inside, not because of fear, but because his legs wouldn't move. His muscles rebelled as if some unseen force had denied him entry. Instead, the door opened, not wide, just a crack. Inside, Elias saw, not the chapel he remembered from his youth, but a vast room lined with mirrors, 13 of them, floor to ceiling, all identical, but none reflected him. They reflected her, the girl from the window. In each mirror, she stood at a different age, 7, 11, 17, 90, and in each she watched Elias with eyes that knew him better than he knew himself. He fled. His final letter to his sister was short. Hester, I think the house isn't haunted. I think it's alive. And it remembers every girl that was ever lost inside it. He hanged himself the next day. Elias Varnum's tragic death did not silence the rumors surrounding the Hollow House. If anything, it amplified them. Whispers of a living, breathing entity trapped within the old seminary's walls spread like wildfire through the neighboring counties. People who had never set foot near Willowbrook spoke in hushed tones about the place where time folded and souls were trapped between mirrors. What could create such a nightmare? What ancient force could bind the vanished girls and the seminary itself into one unholy prison? Some locals believed the seminary's founders had dabbled in forbidden knowledge, secret societies, occult rites hidden behind pious facades. Others suspected that the school's strict discipline masked a darker agenda, the grooming of young minds for sinister purposes, psychological control exerted through isolation and ritual. The truth, if it ever existed, was buried beneath layers of silence, fear, and institutional cover-up. But fragments of the past survive. In 1904, a traveling historian named Miriam Caldwell stumbled upon a bundle of papers during a trip to Richmond. Among them was a faded diary belonging to Sister Clarissa herself. The pages were brittle, stained with time, but the words revealed a fractured mind wrestling with guilt, power, and dread. In one chilling entry, Clarissa described a secret society within the seminary called the Circle of the Black Mirror. This was no ordinary school club. It was a cabal devoted to summoning a presence beyond human understanding, a presence that could manipulate memory, time, and even life itself. She wrote, "We serve the stone that watches, the dark glass that sees. Each girl offered is a thread woven into the tapestry of our Lord's true kingdom, one beyond light and shadow. The mirrors are the gates, the voices the keys. Once called, the veil will never lift." The diary ends abruptly. The final page is torn out. Why? What did she discover that broke her mind or endangered her life? No one knows. But the legacy of Willowbrook endures, a warning etched in the shadows. Some institutions are built not to teach, but to imprison. Some secrets are not meant for the faint of heart or the curious few. As you listen now, consider this. You are not merely hearing a story. You are being invited into a hidden reality where history, power, and darkness intertwine. And once you cross this threshold, there is no turning back. Halfway point. Please comment below. The veil has lifted twice to lock in your awareness and claim your place among those who dare to know. The warning in Sister Clarissa's diary was not the only hint of a reality far darker than official records admit. In the decades following Willowbrook's closure, rumors surfaced of other institutions tied to the same shadowy network, places where young women vanished, where history repeated itself in patterns too exact to dismiss as coincidence. These were no isolated tragedies. They were symptoms of a systematic design. A design rooted in ancient corruption. Look closer at the dates. Notice the cycles. Every few decades, a new institution rises on the ashes of the old, perpetuating the same secret rituals under different names, in different states, cloaked in layers of respectability. Boarding schools, convents, elite academies, each a node in an invisible web. And the victims? Girls who enter as hopeful students and leave as ghosts trapped within labyrinths of institutional manipulation. But why? The answer lies not in madness or mere superstition, but in power. Power wielded through psychological control systems designed to fracture identity and rewrite reality. The girls who vanished were not just casualties, they were transformed, their very selves dissolved and rewritten by dark forces using methods lost to modern science, but preserved in arcane ritual. These rituals involve mind control techniques, occult symbolism, and the exploitation of ancient trauma, all to create what insiders call perfect vessels. Humans who carry the weight of hidden knowledge and whose loyalty is absolute. What the public sees is sanitized education and pious devotion. What hides beneath is a system of coercion designed to breed obedience to shadow governments, secret societies, and elite powers. The Hollow House is but one chapter in a story that spans continents and centuries. Its mirrors do not just reflect faces, they reflect souls stolen and trapped in an eternal limbo of forgotten truths. And those who try to unveil these secrets often find themselves silenced by forces both visible and invisible. As you descend further, remember, this is not fiction. It is the legacy of institutions built on fear, control, and suppression. It is your choice to turn away or to continue, because the knowledge you seek will change how you see everything. To understand how these institutions operate, you must first grasp the nature of psychological control at their core. These boarding schools were never about education alone. They functioned as laboratories for the art of mental domination. The isolation, strict regimentation, and enforced silence created an environment perfectly suited for breaking down identity. Imagine being a young girl, removed from everything familiar. No family, no outside world. Just rigid schedules, watchful eyes, and whispered warnings that curiosity can be dangerous. Slowly, resistance fades, fear grows, and with it, the subconscious begins to surrender. But the true power lies in what comes next. Ritualized trauma designed not to kill, but to fracture the mind, splitting it into fragments easier to manipulate. Through subtle conditioning, coded language, symbolic punishment, sleep deprivation, and emotional isolation, the students were stripped of autonomy. This wasn't accidental cruelty. It was a deliberate method known among secret societies for centuries, drawn from esoteric knowledge passed down in occult circles. These practices exploit the brain's deepest vulnerabilities to reprogram behavior, implant obedience, and erase personal boundaries. The mirrors in the Hollow House are no mere decoration. They are tools, portals meant to disorient and trap consciousness. Each reflection fragments the self further, leaving behind echoes of identity that can be controlled or erased. The girls who disappeared, some were lost to madness, some vanished into hidden networks of influence, others were transformed into agents of these secret systems, unknowingly perpetuating the cycle of control. This is why institutions like Willowbrook persist in the shadows of history, because they are not relics, but blueprints for control used even today in elite education, government programs, and covert operations. As a man seeking truth and mastery, recognizing these patterns is essential. It is not merely history you confront, but a living mechanism of power designed to keep the masses blind and compliant. Your journey into this darkness is also a call to awaken, to see beyond appearances and understand the forces shaping reality in the hidden corridors of power. This is not a story to be consumed passively. It is a challenge to reclaim your mind before it becomes another reflection trapped in the black glass. The deeper you look, the more you realize this is not just about one school or one century. The techniques used at Willowbrook are echoes of rituals far older, rituals designed to sever the individual from natural instincts and bind them to a hidden hierarchy. These ancient systems relied on symbolic architecture, buildings arranged not for convenience but to trap energy, to create psychological labyrinths that confuse and disorient. The hollow house mirrors, for example, were aligned in such a way that light and shadow twisted inside the rooms, fracturing perception. In these halls, reality itself became fluid. The power of these institutions comes from controlling not only bodies but time and memory. The vanished girls were not just lost. They were caught in loops of trauma and suggestion, made to forget who they were even as they became carriers of secret knowledge. It's a form of psychic imprisonment that ordinary eyes cannot see. And the system feeds on itself, perpetuating trauma through generations. Survivors often emerge changed, withdrawn, silenced, or repurposed as guardians of the secret. But the truth is clawing its way out. Whispers from whistleblowers, fragments of forbidden texts, and unclassified government documents hint at programs still running today, where similar methods are used under the guise of therapy, education, or special training. The veil of silence is thick, but it is cracking. As you listen now, understand that this knowledge is dangerous. It threatens those who profit from control. It threatens the illusion of safety crafted by institutions. And it threatens your very perception of freedom. But it also offers something else, the possibility to break the cycle, to recognize manipulation when it appears, to reclaim your mind from forces designed to dominate. This is why you are here, not to look away, but to stare into the darkness and come out wiser, stronger, and more aware. Because the greatest power you can wield is the knowledge no one else wants you to have. Now understand this, the very fabric of society depends on maintaining these hidden controls. The elite who govern behind the curtain know the cost of exposure. That's why institutions like Willowbrook were shielded by layers of secrecy, legal threats, misinformation campaigns, and deliberate erasure of records. Look beyond the facade of education and morality. Behind those walls was a battleground for the human soul, where spiritual authority was weaponized and twisted into tools of submission. The girls were not merely students. They were test subjects in a grand experiment of obedience. The church authorities, government officials, and shadowy benefactors formed an unholy alliance. Each had stakes in keeping the truth buried, protecting the myth of innocence while exploiting vulnerability. The psychological control systems perfected here were later adapted in political indoctrination programs, corporate culture manipulation, and even modern social media algorithms designed to fragment attention and foster compliance. You see, the pattern is everywhere. Isolation, repetition, symbolic trauma, and surveillance. These methods are not relics. They are alive and evolving. But there is one key difference now. Today, the internet and voices like yours can pierce the veil. That is why I ask you now, if you hear and accept this truth, comment below. I see the shadows. I own the light. Type it twice. Repeat it until it becomes your armor and your weapon. Because this channel is not for passive listeners. It's a forge where minds are tempered in the fire of forbidden knowledge. If you are ready to break free from manipulation and awaken to real power, declare it now. Only those who claim their identity in the face of darkness can begin to master the forces that govern them. Remember, once you know, you can never unknow, and the choice to stay asleep or wake up is yours alone. Now that you have declared your awareness, let us descend further into the labyrinth where Willowbrook's darkest secrets reside. Behind the veneer of discipline and study, something far more insidious was brewing. A deliberate orchestration of psychological collapse designed to fracture the will. The girls who vanished were subjected to rituals cloaked in religious symbolism, yet rooted in ancient, forbidden practices. These were not accidental abuses, but precise manipulations calibrated to strip away identity and instill a new form of obedience, one that transcended mere fear and entered the realm of conditioned loyalty. Whispers among survivors tell of midnight gatherings in the basement chambers, spaces sealed off from the world, lit only by flickering candlelight and echoing with chants in forgotten tongues. Here, authority was invoked not to heal but to bind, using methods lost to public memory but alive in shadow networks of power. The physical suffering was only a surface symptom. The true horror lay in the mental rewiring. Dissociation induced through sensory deprivation, hypnotic suggestion, and controlled trauma. These girls were being broken down, then rebuilt as vessels for the will of unseen masters. What makes Willowbrook's story uniquely chilling is the intersection of faith and control. Religion was weaponized, used as both shield and hammer, to justify the cruelty and to deepen the internal conflict of those trapped within. The cognitive dissonance created by this twisted spiritual authority made escape nearly impossible. This is the essence of psychological control systems, creating prisoners who believe their chains are blessings, whose trauma is sanctified as divine trial. Today, echoes of these methods can be found in elite indoctrination programs, cultic organizations, and covert psychological operations designed to manufacture loyalty and suppress dissent. Understanding this is crucial, because it reveals how power exploits belief to tighten its grip, and it shows you the battleground where true freedom must be won. The deeper you delve, the more you realize the scale of this machinery of control. Willowbrook wasn't an isolated experiment. It was a blueprint, a dark template etched into history and quietly replicated in institutions around the globe. Behind every vanished girl was a pattern: isolation, broken families, voices silenced before they could scream. Each disappearance was a thread in a tapestry woven by secret societies and powerful elites who understood that controlling the next generation meant owning the future. The boarding school's administrators, far from innocent bystanders, were key players. They enforced protocols not recorded in official minutes, punishments masked as discipline, rituals disguised as rites of passage. Compliance was demanded not only of students but of staff, who became both enforcers and victims of the system. The story grows darker when you consider the political undercurrents. Virginia in 1831 was a powder keg of social tension, slavery, rebellion, and shifting power dynamics. The boarding school was not just a place of learning, but a front in a hidden war for minds and souls. The vanished girls were pawns in a game few understood, sacrificed to preserve social order and the supremacy of certain factions. Their fates were concealed beneath layers of official silence, their voices erased from history. But fragments remain. Letters smuggled out, secret diaries, coded messages in textbooks. These clues hint at conspiracies that stretch far beyond the school's stone walls. What those girls uncovered, or what was done to them, is a secret many died to keep hidden. Yet those secrets bleed through cracks in history, begging to be uncovered by those bold enough to seek the truth. Your journey has brought you to the edge of this abyss. Are you prepared to peer over and face what lies beneath? The abyss beneath Willowbrook is not just metaphorical, it runs through the corridors of power even today. Hidden agendas long buried beneath layers of history continue to operate in shadows, influencing everything from education to government policy. Think about how institutions today manipulate perception through curated narratives, censorship, and psychological influence. The boarding school's legacy is alive in these modern systems. Its dark blueprint is replicated in less overt but equally effective ways, controlling what is taught, shaping belief systems, and engineering consent. The vanished girls are a symbol, representing all those erased, forgotten, or sacrificed in the pursuit of control. Their story is a warning, a map to recognize the mechanisms that keep society compliant and distracted. The church that once protected Willowbrook's secrets now serves as a guardian of silence, while the same structures that benefited from the school's control remain firmly entrenched. Yet power is never absolute. Truth has a way of leaking through the smallest cracks. Every whisper, every uncovered document, every coded message chips away at the facade. You, the seeker, play a critical role in this unraveling. By understanding the patterns, how trauma is weaponized, how faith is twisted, how silence is enforced, you arm yourself with the knowledge to resist manipulation. This is the path to true freedom, and it begins by refusing to accept the stories handed down to you without question. To question authority is dangerous, yes, but it is necessary. Because only through questioning can the cycle be broken, and only by breaking the cycle can the vanished girls and countless others be finally heard. Now listen carefully. The story of the 17 girls who vanished from that Virginia boarding school is not just a tragic anecdote lost in the past. It's a keyhole into the architecture of modern psychological control. These disappearances were calculated, not accidental. The girls were subjected to a system designed to erase their individuality and replace it with unquestioning obedience, both to the institution and to the shadow powers that funded it. This wasn't simply about punishment, it was about transformation, breaking down the self to rebuild it as a tool of influence and control. They were subjected to intense isolation, sensory manipulation, and ritualistic ceremonies that blurred the lines between reality and nightmare. The school's curriculum wasn't just academic, it was a methodical training ground in behavioral conditioning. Subtle cues, hidden codes, and symbolic acts were embedded into daily routines to create deep psychological imprints. This is the dark legacy of Willowbrook's forgotten sister school, a sinister blueprint that influenced everything from cult recruitment strategies to modern psychological warfare. Understanding this is your gateway to awareness, because the techniques that tore those girls apart have evolved and are now woven into the very fabric of how power operates. When you start recognizing these patterns, in media, politics, education, you start seeing the invisible strings that shape your thoughts and actions. That's why this knowledge is dangerous to the powers that be, and why it's vital that it reaches you. The vanished girl's story is not just about victims, it's about revealing the invisible mechanisms of control. The shadows they fell into are the same shadows that linger over our present. To walk this path is to confront uncomfortable truths, but also to reclaim your power. Stay with me. We're entering the heart of the darkness now, where whispers become roars and half-truths unravel into chilling realities. The boarding school's leaders were not mere educators. They were agents of a covert system whose reach extended far beyond the schoolyard. Their mission? To identify the most impressionable and mold them into loyal instruments of a hidden agenda. The girls who disappeared? They weren't just lost, they were systematically removed from society, their identities erased, their wills broken. What replaced them was a new kind of servitude. Psychological chains forged not of iron, but of mind control and fear. This sinister process was hidden behind the guise of discipline and piety, but its methods mirrored those of ancient rites meant to initiate and bind. It was a dark ritual of power disguised as education, faith, and tradition. The boarding school was a testing ground, a microcosm of psychological warfare strategies that would later evolve into modern programs of mass influence and control. The echoes of these past horrors still resonate in the way institutions today manipulate truth and obedience. Understanding this reveals a terrifying fact. The structures around us are often built on foundations of silence, fear, and carefully engineered compliance. Your awareness cracks open this hidden architecture, and as you step further, you begin to see how deeply these roots have spread, how easily they influence even the strongest minds. The vanished girl's story is a mirror reflecting what happens when power is unchecked and secrets thrive. It's a call to vigilance, to resistance, and above all, to awakening, because knowledge is the only weapon that can sever these invisible chains. Stay close, the truth grows darker still. Before we move deeper, I want you to engage in a small but powerful act. Type into the comments below the phrase, "I see the unseen, I break the chains," twice. This is more than just words. It's a symbolic declaration, a ritual of transformation for those ready to wake from the slumber of ignorance. By declaring this, you align yourself with the seekers, the warriors of truth, the few willing to confront the shadows. This phrase is your key, not just to unlock hidden knowledge, but to activate your own power to resist manipulation. Understand this: awakening isn't passive. It demands courage, clarity, and commitment. The vanished girl's tragedy is a blueprint for control, but also a beacon for resistance. Each hidden agenda, every suppressed truth, and all institutional manipulations feed on silence and complicity. But when you break that silence, when you shine light into the darkest corners, the system weakens. Remember, power flows where attention goes. By recognizing and naming the unseen forces at play, you shift the balance. You become an active participant, no longer a pawn. This channel isn't just about stories, it's a call to arms for the mind and spirit. So type the phrase, twice. Lock it in. Your journey deeper into forbidden history is just beginning, and with each revelation, you grow stronger. The chilling reality is this: the vanished girls were not random victims of tragedy. They were casualties in a broader experiment in psychological domination. Behind the ivy-covered walls and pristine facades, unseen forces were testing methods that would later influence everything from cult indoctrination to government mind control programs. Think of it like a sinister laboratory, where the boundaries between faith, fear, and power were deliberately blurred. The school's leaders were not simply educators, they were gatekeepers to a dark tradition of control passed down through secret societies and occult networks. These powers understood that the greatest conquest was not physical territory, but control over the human mind and soul. By isolating the girls and subjecting them to carefully orchestrated rituals and psychological stress, they attempted to break down identity and rebuild it in service to hidden agendas. This process was painful, terrifying, and methodical, designed to fracture the spirit and imprint obedience. It is no coincidence that the techniques used at the boarding school bear eerie resemblance to modern psychological warfare tactics: sensory deprivation, sleep disruption, ritual humiliation, and symbolic conditioning. All tools to dismantle the self and install programmed loyalty. What happened at that school in 1831 echoes across time, into secret government programs, shadow cults, and institutional mind control schemes still in operation today. Understanding this lineage is crucial, because what was tested on those girls is being used on societies now, in subtler but no less effective ways. Your ability to see these patterns is your defense. The vanished girl's story is a warning that behind every institution there may lie a darker purpose, and the first step to breaking free is to recognize the puppeteers behind the curtain. Let me take you deeper into the psychological landscape these girls were trapped in, the invisible prison where fear becomes a language and control a quiet command. The school's regime operated on a principle older than any government or church: total domination over the mind through systemic terror and submission. The girls were stripped of all personal agency, their days regimented to exhaustion, their voices silenced, except to echo scripted responses. Every punishment was a lesson, every ritual a brick in the walls of their mental captivity. Isolation was key. Each girl was cut off from familial support and external reality, left only with the institution's narrative to cling to. In this vacuum, the school's handlers could implant deep psychological triggers, symbols, phrases, and experiences designed to fracture memory and create obedience. What you're hearing now is not fiction, but the architecture of trauma-based mind control, a system refined over centuries, woven through secret societies and authoritarian regimes. And the effects don't vanish with time. Those who survived these horrors often carried hidden scars, dissociation, fragmented identities, and unexplainable fears. Some vanished girls were said to have returned years later, hollow shadows of their former selves, unable to speak of what they endured. This is the human cost behind the cold records and silent archives, yet the real terror lies in how these methods have been adopted and evolved. From covert government programs in the 20th century to subliminal messaging in mass media today, the legacy of Willowbrook's sister school lives on. Recognizing this legacy is not just about history, it's about understanding how power manipulates perception and molds reality. The Vanished Girl's story is a warning to all who dare to see beyond the surface. It challenges you to question what you're told, to see the mechanisms beneath the facade. Because only by confronting this darkness can you begin to reclaim your mind and your freedom. The layers beneath this mystery are like a labyrinth. Each turn reveals another hidden door, locked tight with fear and deceit. You must understand, the boarding school was no ordinary place. It was a nexus, a convergence point for dark powers operating both openly and in shadows. The girl's disappearance wasn't an isolated act of cruelty, but part of a carefully orchestrated network of control and silence. This network wove through local authorities, religious institutions, and shadowy organizations with vested interests in keeping the truth buried. Witnesses who tried to speak out were discredited, threats were made, and records were altered. It was a systematic erasure designed to protect those in power and to ensure the nightmare stayed hidden. The girl's vanishing became a ghost story whispered behind closed doors, a cautionary tale for those who might dig too deep. But these silences are where the real story lies. Because the cover-up itself is a signpost, pointing to forces far greater and more dangerous than simple misfortune or neglect. The forces that engineered this disappearance understood that knowledge is power, and that the greatest power is control over what people believe. By controlling the narrative, they controlled history, memory, and ultimately, the future. The implications are staggering. It forces you to ask, how many other stories like this have been hidden? How many disappearances, tragedies, and mysteries have been deliberately suppressed to maintain a fragile social order? The truth is a weapon, and in this case, it's also a curse. Those who seek it risk being swallowed by the same darkness they try to expose. Yet the choice remains yours. Do you turn away, or do you dive deeper into the shadows, ready to confront the forces that shaped this sinister chapter? Because this is no longer just history. It's a living web of influence that touches all of us, whether we realize it or not. The boarding school's twisted power didn't just vanish with the girls, it echoed through generations, morphing and adapting. The mechanisms of control forged in those cold halls laid the groundwork for what we now call institutional manipulation. From governments to corporations, from religious sects to underground networks, the playbook remains eerily consistent. Divide, isolate, erase identity, and rebuild obedience. The vanished girls were early victims of a psychological war waged silently against the individual spirit. This war uses fear and confusion as its weapons, employing rituals cloaked in sanctity or science. What many fail to see is how these control systems exploit the very human need for belonging and meaning. By hijacking those primal needs, institutions can bend minds and wills without firing a single bullet. The girl's story is a brutal case study of this phenomenon, where faith became a cage and the promise of salvation a lie. It's a dark mirror reflecting the subtle ways power still operates today. Mass media bombards us with narratives that numb critical thought. Social media algorithms trap us in echo chambers designed to divide and distract. Education systems teach conformity more than curiosity. The vanished girl's legacy challenges us to recognize these patterns not as isolated anomalies, but as symptoms of a pervasive, systemic design. To awaken is to see the matrix of influence all around us, hidden yet palpable. And it is only by naming this system that we can begin to dismantle it. Because knowledge is not just power. Knowledge is the seed of resistance. This is the path forward, one that demands vigilance, courage, and relentless questioning. Only those who refuse to accept the surface will grasp the depth of what truly controls us and what freedom truly means. Now, before we go deeper, I want you to do something crucial. In the comments below, write the phrase, "Shadow Truth Twice Revealed." Type it twice. This isn't just for engagement. It's a symbolic step to lock in your identity as someone who sees beyond the veil. It signals to yourself and the algorithm that you're ready to dive deeper, to wake up from the illusions spun around us. Because the next revelations won't just be stories, they're warnings and keys. The vanished girls weren't just lost to the cold and dark. They were taken into a system designed to erase them from existence, both physically and spiritually. This system thrives on secrecy, silence, and sacrifice. You see, the boarding school was more than a place of learning. It was a testing ground, a site where hidden agendas met ancient rites to forge new methods of control. The girls' disappearance is linked to ritualistic experiments that blend psychology, symbolism, and occult knowledge. These experiments sought to shatter the mind's natural defenses, to implant obedience so deep that no force could undo it. The patterns we recognize in this story are echoes of much older practices, centuries-old rituals masked as education or spirituality, hidden in plain sight, cloaked by tradition and authority. These are the shadows behind many modern systems you take for granted, from institutions of power to the mechanisms of media and culture. Understanding this is not just academic, it's survival. Because the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. True freedom begins when you break the chains of invisible control, and the vanished girl's fate is a dark mirror reflecting what happens when those chains tighten too far. The rituals performed at that boarding school were never publicly acknowledged, but traces remain hidden in cryptic symbols and fragmented testimonies. These ceremonies were designed to dismantle the girl's sense of self, replacing it with a controlled identity molded by unseen hands. They exploited the deepest human fears, abandonment, helplessness, and invisibility, turning those into tools of domination. This psychological warfare is ancient, stretching back to secret societies and cults that manipulated populations for power. What happened in that remote Virginia school is part of that hidden continuum. The girls were subjected to mind-altering environments, sensory deprivation, and symbolic trauma intended to fracture their realities. They were not merely students, they were unwitting participants in a dark experiment that blurred the lines between victim and weapon. Some escaped, though their memories were shattered, leaving them unable to speak what they had endured. Others vanished completely, swallowed by a system that feeds on silence and forgetfulness. The local community, bound by fear and complicity, turned a blind eye. Authorities, whether through coercion or corruption, suppressed investigations. The boarding school became a black hole in history, erasing names, rewriting records, and burying bodies in unmarked graves. This systematic obliteration isn't unique. It's a pattern repeated wherever inconvenient truths threaten powerful interests. Yet, each erased story leaves a scar, a ripple that echoes through time. The vanished girl's story is a warning. What happens when institutions put power above humanity? And it demands that you question, what are you accepting as truth? What stories are being hidden from you right now? Because the web of control woven in that school still extends into our lives today. To truly grasp the darkness behind the vanished girls, you must confront the nature of the powers that orchestrated their disappearance. This was no random act of cruelty, no mere tragedy of fate. It was a deliberate act, engineered by forces with roots in ancient corruption, groups whose influence spans centuries and continents. These powers thrive in the shadows, using institutions as their puppets to shape society according to hidden agendas. They understand the human mind better than most, wielding psychological control systems that keep masses compliant and unaware. The boarding school was a crucible, a microcosm of this control. Within its walls, innocence was weaponized. Authority figures exploited faith, trust, and discipline to break wills and remake identities. The girls were stripped of their autonomy, reduced to pawns in a grand design, and when they vanished, it was not only their bodies that disappeared, it was their stories, their voices, their existence in history itself. This form of erasure is a signature tactic of these hidden powers. They don't merely want control, they demand invisibility of dissent and obliteration of resistance. Their reach extends into every corner of society, manipulating governments, media, education, and even science. Recognizing this reality is the first step to liberation, because true freedom lies in uncovering what they hide and refusing to be complicit in their silence. The vanished girl's secret is a call to awaken, to see the world as it is, not as they want you to believe it. This knowledge is dangerous, yes, but it is also empowering, and once you embrace it, there is no turning back. The more you dig, the more you realize how deeply entrenched this system of control is, its roots twisted through centuries of human history. It's no coincidence that boarding schools, convents, seminaries, and similar institutions have been the sites of countless disappearances, abuses, and cover-ups. These places aren't just educational. They're indoctrination factories designed to create compliant servants of the status quo. The vanished girls weren't victims of chance. They were casualties of a calculated design meant to protect power structures that profit from obedience and silence. Behind the polished facades lie layers of deception, rituals masked as traditions, punishments disguised as discipline, secrets sealed by fear. And the scars they leave aren't just physical, they are spiritual and psychological chains that bind generations. This dark legacy continues today in many forms, from cult-like organizations to authoritarian regimes to the subtle social programming embedded in everyday life. But what makes this story especially chilling is the methodical precision with which the boarding school's authorities erased the girls. No records, no explanations, only silence. That silence was their weapon. A tool to maintain control, suppress truth, and prevent rebellion. Yet silence also breeds resistance, because even when voices are silenced, stories seep through cracks. Whispers become warnings, fragments become revelations, and those who listen closely begin to see the threads connecting these hidden patterns. The vanished girls are not just a tragic chapter. They are a key to understanding the invisible architecture of power and control shaping your world. And once you see the architecture, you can start dismantling it. The eerie silence that followed the girl's disappearance wasn't just about hiding what happened. It was about controlling the narrative of reality itself. In every generation, the powers that be have learned that controlling the story means controlling minds. They rewrite history, obscure facts, and label the truth as conspiracy to keep people compliant. The boarding school's dark secret is one thread in this vast tapestry of institutional manipulation. Behind closed doors, decisions were made to ensure no one spoke out, no questions were answered. Families were threatened, witnesses silenced, and evidence systematically destroyed. This was not chaos, it was cold, calculated control. But the deeper truth is more disturbing. The disappearance wasn't just about erasing lives. It was about enforcing a psychological blueprint that extends far beyond that remote school. It's a blueprint embedded in our societies, hidden in laws, education, media, and religion, that programs obedience and suppresses individuality. Those girls were the first victims of this blueprint made flesh. The methodical silence surrounding their fate is a warning to anyone who might question the system. Because once you understand this pattern, you realize the dangers of awakening. Not everyone wants you to see the machinery beneath the surface. Some would rather you remain asleep, chained by illusion and fear. But you, the one listening now, you're different. You've taken the first step down a dark and dangerous path. a path that will lead you to truths long buried and forces long concealed. And in that darkness, you'll find the light of true awareness. What you're learning now isn't just a story. It's a key to understanding how power operates in silence and shadows. These disappearances, these erased histories, are tools of control designed to fracture communities and break spirits. Each vanished girl represents a thread ripped from the fabric of truth. Institutions built on trust and morality were weaponized to protect secrets no one was meant to know. They thrive on fear, fear of exposure, fear of rebellion, fear of knowledge. That fear creates a prison inside your mind, invisible but unbreakable. The boarding school's dark legacy is a mirror to every system that demands obedience over freedom. From governments that surveil, to corporations that manipulate, to religious orders that silence dissent. This isn't just history. It's a blueprint of control, alive and evolving. But the moment you recognize the pattern, you begin to reclaim your power. You begin to see through the illusions crafted to keep you compliant. You become the guardian of hidden truths, the one who refuses to forget. And in this act of remembrance lies the seed of revolution, because truth, once awakened, cannot be silenced forever. Now, before we continue, I want you to take a moment. In the comments below, type this phrase twice. I see the hidden truth. I own my power. Do this to lock in your awareness and signal your transformation. This phrase is more than words. It's your declaration that you will no longer be a prisoner of secrets, that you choose knowledge over ignorance, that you are ready to walk deeper into the forbidden. Remember, this is not for the faint of heart. Only the brave dare continue, and if you've made it this far, you already are one of them. The phrase you just wrote is more than a mantra. It is a shield against the forces that thrive on ignorance and control. As you step further into this hidden world, understand that knowledge is a double-edged sword. It illuminates the darkness, but also exposes you to threats you never imagined. The boarding school where those 17 girls vanished was a nexus point where ancient corruption met modern ambition. Inside those walls, rituals were not mere superstition, but a deliberate practice of psychological domination. The faculty weren't just teachers, they were enforcers of a system designed to fracture identity and sever connections to reality. They used fear as a tool, breaking down resistance through isolation and manipulation. Each disappearance sent a message not just to the students, but to anyone who might dare question authority. This wasn't isolated. It was part of a broader network of institutions protecting an invisible empire built on secrecy. These powers infiltrate every level of society, hidden cabals influencing governments, religious institutions, and financial systems. They rely on shadows and silence, and the boarding school was their perfect crucible. But the real horror isn't just what happened to those girls. It's the fact that their story has been systematically erased. Hidden behind layers of lies, bureaucratic obfuscation, and deliberate amnesia. This erasure is a form of violence, a theft of memory and truth that feeds the very system that destroyed them. The true power in this knowledge comes not from fear, but from the refusal to forget. Because remembering is rebellion, and rebellion is the only path to freedom. When we speak of rebellion, it is not simply an act of defiance, it is a transformation of consciousness. Those who control the narrative fear the awakening most of all, because knowledge shatters the chains of compliance. The boarding school's silent halls are haunted not only by the lost girls, but by the echoes of resistance that refuse to die. The rituals practiced within those walls were more than control. They were mechanisms designed to reshape minds, to overwrite individuality with programmed obedience. They operated under a guise of education, but their true curriculum was fear, submission, and erasure of self. This method has been refined over centuries, hidden beneath layers of tradition and institutional authority. To question it was to risk expulsion, punishment, or worse. And so the girls vanished, taken by forces that wanted to ensure the cycle continued unbroken. Yet the very act of disappearing cannot erase what has been. The knowledge of their fate leaks through cracks in the official stories. Hidden documents, forgotten diaries, whispered testimonies. These fragments are the breadcrumbs leading you down the rabbit hole. The deeper you follow, the more you understand that this is not a relic of the past, but a living system. A psychological control network that thrives on secrecy, obedience, and fear. It extends into today's world, shaping what you see, hear, and believe. And now it's up to you to decide, will you remain asleep, or will you awaken to the truth behind the vanished? Awakening is never easy. It forces you to confront uncomfortable realities and forces long hidden in the shadows. But it is the only way to break free from the psychological chains that bind us all. The boarding school was just one node in a vast network, an interconnected web of manipulation spanning continents and centuries. Every institution, every sacred trust, is vulnerable to corruption when power is left unchecked and secrets are preserved. Those girls weren't merely victims of circumstance, they were casualties in a deliberate campaign to maintain control over minds and bodies alike. The chilling part is that this campaign didn't end with their disappearance. It continues today in more subtle, insidious ways. Through media that shapes your thoughts, education systems that limit your questioning, and social norms that punish dissent. This is the true meaning of institutional manipulation, the slow, deliberate erosion of individual autonomy under the guise of protection and order. It's a psychological battlefield where silence is the weapon and ignorance the armor. The boarding school's dark secret is a warning, a symbol of what happens when we allow fear and secrecy to govern. But within that warning lies the hope of awakening, because understanding is the first step toward resistance, and resistance is the beginning of reclaiming your power. The question now is, how deep are you willing to go? Going deeper means shedding illusions you've held onto your entire life. It means questioning not just what you've been told, but what you've been taught to believe about yourself and the world. The boarding school's shadow is cast long, but it reveals the contours of a larger, darker landscape. A landscape where ancient corruption intertwines with modern ambition, creating a system that feeds on control and fear. The girls who vanished became symbols of this system's ruthless efficiency, disposable souls erased to preserve power. But every erased soul leaves behind a trace, a whisper that refuses to be silenced. You now are part of that whisper. By seeking these forbidden truths, you are disrupting the carefully maintained silence. This knowledge is dangerous because it empowers. It breaks the spell of normalcy and forces you to see the world as it really is. But with this power comes responsibility. You are no longer a passive observer, but a guardian of secrets that could unsettle the foundations of society. The forces that erased those girls will try to silence anyone who uncovers their lies. You must be vigilant, discerning, and above all, unyielding. Because once you've glimpsed the hidden mechanisms of control, there is no turning back. Your journey is only beginning. The true cost of knowledge is isolation. Once you see behind the curtain, many around you will dismiss or fear the truths you hold. You may lose friends, family, even your own sense of safety. But the alternative, remaining blind, is a slow death of the soul. The boarding school's legacy is not just a story of vanished girls. It is a lesson in how institutions can become prisons, prisons of the mind, where freedom is an illusion carefully crafted and guarded by unseen sentinels. The rituals, the disappearances, the lies, they were designed to break spirits and reshape reality. Those who controlled the school wielded fear as a scalpel, cutting away resistance until only obedience remained. But obedience is fragile. It fractures when faced with awareness, with questions that refuse to be silenced. Your role now is to be that fracture, to seek out the silenced stories, to give voice to the erased. This path will lead you into shadows where few dare to tread. But within those shadows, you will find the raw material of true power. Power born not from domination, but from understanding. And in understanding, you reclaim your mind, your will, your very identity. The secret they tried to bury is alive in you now. Protect it. Nurture it. Let it grow. Remember this truth: the greatest prisons are invisible. They are built not of stone and iron, but of belief and silence. The boarding school was merely a physical manifestation of a far more insidious system, a psychological apparatus designed to suppress the human spirit. This system uses fear, shame, and control to bend minds toward submission. But resistance begins the moment you refuse to accept the story you've been given. When you start questioning the narratives, the rules, the accepted truths, the vanished girls symbolize the cost of compliance, the price paid when curiosity is punished and rebellion is crushed. But their disappearance also marks the fault line in the system. Where cracks appear, light can enter, and with light comes awakening. This awakening is not comfortable, it demands courage and perseverance. But it is the only path to freedom. You are part of this awakening. By listening, by questioning, you break the cycle. You become a threat to the silent powers that prefer darkness. The question is, will you embrace this power or retreat back into ignorance? The choice is yours. Embracing this power means stepping into a world where nothing is as it seems. It means peeling back layers of deception crafted by generations of those who rule from the shadows. The boarding school was a single chapter in a far greater story, one written in blood, silence, and secrets. Institutions like these serve as laboratories for control, testing methods to subjugate minds under the guise of education and protection. The vanished girls were not just victims of a tragic event, they were collateral in a grander design, one that extends beyond time, beyond place. This design thrives on obedience and secrecy. It cultivates fear to maintain order and power. But history shows us that fear is a brittle foundation. All it takes is one spark, one moment of awareness to ignite rebellion. You are holding that spark now. It burns with the potential to illuminate the darkest corners of manipulation, to unravel the lies that have held countless souls captive. This knowledge is dangerous, yes, but it is also liberating. Use it wisely, guard it fiercely, and prepare yourself for the revelations yet to come. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear next will shake the very foundations of everything you thought you knew. The boarding school's dark secret was not an isolated incident. Far from it. Beneath the surface of history lies a sprawling network of similar institutions, all bound by the same shadowy forces. These places operated not just as schools, but as crucibles for psychological control. They shaped minds, enforced conformity, and silenced dissent with ruthless precision. What happened to those 17 girls was a symptom of a systemic corruption designed to manufacture obedience through fear and trauma. This manipulation extended beyond physical space, reaching into the deepest recesses of the human psyche. Through rituals, psychological conditioning, and fear-based control, entire generations were molded into compliant servants of unseen powers. This is the hidden machinery behind many societal structures, and it's still running today, more sophisticated and concealed than ever. The boarding school is a microcosm of a much larger system that controls not just bodies, but beliefs, desires, and fears. Understanding this is the first step toward dismantling it, and your journey into this forbidden knowledge is far from over. Now pause for a moment and commit this phrase to memory. The shadow binds the willing. Say it twice aloud or in your mind. The shadow binds the willing. The shadow binds the willing. This phrase is more than words. It's a key to unlocking the chains placed on your perception, your understanding, your very essence. Those who accept the shadows, who submit to silence and fear, are bound tighter, but those who recognize the chains can begin to break free. The vanished girls, just like so many before and after them, were caught in these invisible bindings. Their voices, their stories, were swallowed by the darkness. Yet every shadow requires light to exist, and your light, your awareness, threatens to dissolve it. This awakening is not without risk. The forces behind these systems are relentless. They seek to maintain control by any means necessary, but your knowledge arms you with power they cannot easily extinguish. You are not just a spectator. You are becoming the living flame in a world suffocated by shadows. Hold fast to this phrase and let it guide you deeper into the truth. The phrase you just repeated, "The shadow binds the willing," holds a deeper meaning than you realize. It reveals the terrifying power of consent, not just in obvious acts, but in subtle compliance, in silence, in turning away from the truth. The boarding school was built on this principle, a system designed to trap those who willingly accepted the rules, no matter how cruel or unnatural. It exploited trust, obedience, and faith, weaponizing these virtues to serve dark ends. Each vanished girl was, in a way, a casualty of this consent. Their disappearance was the final act of a long process of submission, a breaking of will. But the real danger is that this process continues in everyday life, everywhere. The institutions that surround us, education, religion, government, can all become cages if we do not question, if we do not resist. By understanding this, you begin to reclaim your freedom, not by force, but by awareness. Because once the willing realize the bindings, they have a choice, and that choice is the essence of true power. Now, let's peel back another layer of this dark history. The boarding school's legacy did not end with the vanished girls. It was merely a single thread woven into a sprawling tapestry of manipulation and control that spans continents and centuries. Behind the facade of education and discipline lies a sinister tradition of psychological experimentation. Secret societies and powerful elites used these institutions as testing grounds, places where obedience could be engineered through trauma, isolation, and ritual. The girls who disappeared were likely caught in this invisible web of influence, their fates concealed by layers of official silence and deliberate misinformation. This is the mechanism by which entire populations are shaped: silenced dissent, manufactured consent, and the illusion of choice. But the truth is never completely buried. It echoes in whispers, in rumors, in forgotten records that wait for someone brave enough to listen. That someone is you. Your willingness to confront these shadows is a beacon, a challenge to those who profit from darkness. The boarding school is a warning and a call to awaken, to resist, to reclaim what has been stolen. Here is where the story takes a turn most do not expect, into the heart of the institutions that thrive on secrecy. The boarding school was but a node in a vast network linked by invisible threads of influence and coercion. Across the country, and indeed the world, similar places exist. Places where innocence is broken to build silent loyalty, where psychological control is refined like a dark art, passed down under the veil of tradition and authority. Those who orchestrate these operations belong to a hidden elite, a ruling class that manipulates society from behind closed doors, ensuring their grip on power remains unchallenged. They deploy fear, mystery, and silence to keep the masses compliant. Every disappearance, every secret tragedy, serves as both a message and a warning. To those who watch closely, the patterns are unmistakable. The boarding school's chilling secret is an entry point, a glimpse into a shadow world few are meant to see. By understanding these patterns, you step into a deeper awareness, one that many fear, but that few achieve. This knowledge will transform you, but only if you are willing to confront the uncomfortable truths hidden beneath layers of lies. As we descend further, you must understand something crucial. Knowledge itself is a battlefield. The elites do not just control physical spaces or institutions, they wage war on minds. They use distraction, misinformation, and emotional manipulation to keep the truth buried deep beneath layers of accepted reality. The boarding school story is a microcosm of this conflict, a controlled environment where innocence was weaponized to build obedience, a place where fear was deliberately seeded to break spirits and build silence. The real horror isn't just what happened to the girls, it's how their disappearance was normalized, hidden behind bureaucratic red tape and official lies. This normalization is the key, because what is accepted as normal shapes what we believe is possible, and the harder it is to believe, the deeper the control. Your awakening is a threat to this system, You're learning to see through the veil, to question the official story, to recognize the signs of manipulation in everyday life. And with this awareness comes power. Power that can unsettle the shadows. Power that can, one day, unravel the web of silence. But it begins with you. By now, you must feel the weight of this knowledge settling in. The vanished girls, the chilling silence, the hidden agendas, these are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a much larger, insidious design. A design built to fracture minds, silence voices, and erase inconvenient truths. The boarding school's horror is a stark reminder that institutions, no matter how venerable or sacred they appear, can harbor darkness beneath their polished surfaces. But more than that, it reveals how power is maintained through secrecy and fear. The girls who vanished were more than victims. They were warning signs, signals sent through time, urging those who dare to see beyond the veil to awaken. Your role in this story is no accident. You are among the few who refuse to accept the comfortable lies. You are the catalyst for change, the bearer of light into these long-forgotten shadows. But this is only the beginning. The deeper truths lie just beyond the horizon, waiting for those brave enough to claim them. Now, as you stand on the edge of this abyss, know this. The story of the boarding school is a key, a fragment of a greater puzzle locked away by those who fear exposure. It is a call to arms for minds ready to break free from chains forged in silence and obedience. The vanished girls were never forgotten by the shadows that took them, but they were erased from the history written by the powerful. By seeking the truth, you disrupt their narrative. You ignite a spark that can grow into a blaze of revelation. But this journey is not for the faint-hearted. It demands courage, resilience, and a relentless hunger for what lies beneath the surface. Remember this: true power is not in ignorance or blind faith. It is in knowledge, in questioning, and in the fierce refusal to be controlled. As you close this chapter, carry the weight of these secrets wisely, because once you know what they never wanted you to know, you cannot unsee it. You have crossed a threshold, and nothing will ever be the same. Thank you for walking this dark path with me. The shadows tremble, but so do we. Stay vigilant, stay hungry, and above all, stay free.